Welcome to Eternal Dread, where fear never sleeps. Tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is, because terror has no limits. If you're brave enough, share and comment, but beware, something might be watching you too. Now, turn off the lights, and let the dread begin. When Craig and I needed to get away, we went to a spot we called No Man's Land. A big dirt patch just outside of our small town of Birdsview. We would come here to talk and watch the stars, as well as the occasional plane or two that would pass every hour or so. No Man's Land was a sacred place that only me, Craig, and a girl or two in town knew of. A place we could visit to rant to one another about life problems, just have a few beers, or to just get away and feel a little smaller. Our town of Birdsview was roughly 30 minutes out from Allentown, where most of the people in our town worked, including us. We were still young, 2 years out of high school, and still couldn't decide on what we should be doing for the rest of our lives. I still lived with my parents, and Craig still lived with his mom. It had just been the two of them ever since his father passed away back when we were in the 2nd grade. So I knew I had to drop whatever I was doing and get the truck ready for No Man's Land when Craig had called me and told me his mom had just passed away. I rushed over to Craig's place where he was sitting on the curb at the end of his driveway. He got up slowly and climbed into the truck. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I guess so," he replied in a broken whisper. The rest of the ride was silent. I drove us to the local liquor store to get us a case of High Life, Craig's favorite beer. Craig stayed in the car leaning to face out the window. Looked back a few times to check on him, but the chill of the wind that night made me turn my back to the truck. When the bell rang against the door, Bruce walked out from behind the counter to shut the door behind me. He muttered something about the damn door can't handle the breeze. I went straight to the fridge where they always keep a 12-pack of Millers. Bruce, a classmate of ours from high school, made his usual snide comments about what he thought me and Craig would be up to in the back of the truck in the middle of nowhere as he scanned the beer. I'm glad I was the one to get the beer, as Craig was not one to take any shit from anyone, and especially never put up with Bruce's jokes. Some small laughs and a rebuttal about what Bruce might be up to when no one else is in the store is always enough to lighten the mood and get him off our backs. Although I still remember something he said to me that night. "Yeah, as long as all these damn ghosts will give me some fucking privacy. Them ghosts must be pretty damn bored to come screw around with you in here," I said jokingly. Bruce's smile faded a bit and he leaned forward across the counter. "Man, listen man, tonight's been especially active, brother. I'm talking doors swinging open, crazy noises coming from the ceiling, and get this man, my power keeps going out. But whenever I get up to go check it, it all comes alive again." I leaned in close from the other side of the counter. "You better quit testing out your product, Bruce," I muttered. He raised an almost finished fifth of Jim Beam Red Stag and said, "Don't you go tellin' boss man now," before erupting in a laugh you could hear from the back of the beer freezer. He told me to have a good night as I walked out, and I told him don't work too hard now, which got an even louder laugh than the last one. As I walked back to the truck, Craig was in the same position I left him in until he perked his head up looking past me and into the store. Halfway between the truck and the store, I turned around to see not a single light on in the entire place, like it had never even been opened to begin with. Bruce walked out from the dark to forcefully close the door against the wind. As soon as he managed to get it shut, the store had suddenly come back to life, illuminating the truck, Craig and I, as well as Bruce's Trans Am, as the only things in the parking lot. Bruce looked at us, smiled, shrugged and gave a wave to me and Craig before turning back into the store and returning to his post. I heard one last muffled laugh as I loaded the beers into the truck and left. Still about 20 minutes from the spot, Craig decided to tell me what had happened. At 7 a.m. that morning, his mom had left for her job as a nurse at the hospital in the city. When she arrived at work, she had parked in the garage next to the building when what police believe was a younger man approached her. At around 7:50, her car was seen leaving the parking garage, which is the last they had seen of the vehicle. Shortly after, the police were called about a woman on the ground bleeding. Police and paramedics arrived to see the woman had died from 7 deep stabs into her back just below her neck. Craig had spent the entire day with police being questioned and waiting in the station. Craig being at home sleeping that morning apparently was not a good enough alibi for the police. He said he had only been home for about 15 minutes before he called me. He couldn't handle being at his mother's house after over 10 hours of questions about her. I did my best to console my best friend, and to my relief, he acknowledged that he doesn't expect a professional therapy session from me. He He just needed to get away, to feel a little smaller. We made it to our spot around 10 that night and got ourselves posted up in the bed of the truck. I had put in a row of seats from a smaller car to fit in the bed of my truck for nights at no man's land. It was a fun project that me and Craig had done just a few weeks back and was well worth the effort. We sat and did our best to talk over the wind while we drank our beers. To an extent, my mind was at least taken off of the subject. Craig, however, would end our riffing a little sooner than usual and begin to fall quiet. When I ran out of old memories to bring up, I remembered something I had bought that I thought he would like. I jumped down from the truck and rushed to the center console. As I climbed back in, I tossed him a laser pointer. "What is this?" "Bought it at the liquor store. Try it out, see how far it goes," I said. He pointed it in front of us and hit the button. It shot out a green laser as far as we could see. We then heard a low droning noise. We assumed it might just be another car or a big rig somewhere, but we couldn't see any lights around us. We paid no mind to it and continued pointing the laser into the void darkness all around us. We watched the strong gusts of wind carry the dirt and define the laser's beam as far out as we could make it. I was trying to hit a stop sign I had made out about a quarter mile to the left of us when Craig said, "I wish there were some stars out tonight, or maybe even a plane." Still focused on my task at hand, I said without looking up to him, "I think that's illegal, dude. Well, shining it at the stars isn't. Let me see it real quick." I kept my eyes locked on the spot where I thought the sign was as I surrendered the pointer to him. I figured he would realize he wouldn't be able to hit anything in space from the back of my truck, so I didn't bother to look and waited for him to hand it back over. A bright green line not 20 feet in front of me broke my stone-solid state. It made me jolt back a bit. I laughed and turned to Craig only to see him fixed on the same diagonal beam coming down from the sky that I had seen roughly 20 feet from the truck. The strange thing, however, was that Craig was still shining the laser directly up into the sky. "Are you hitting a plane or something?" I asked. He didn't say anything. We stared at the pastel green cloud the beam was shining through, trying to see past the cloud. Both of us jumped at the deep droning noise that had come back, breaking our deep focus. The wind had picked up at the same time. The second laser whipped in front of us, but with everything happening, Craig had kept our laser pointed directly up. He decided to try turning it on and off a bunch, keeping it in the same general direction. And when he did, the second laser was doing the same, but would hit the ground in different spots all around us. The wind was really moving now, so fast and harsh we could barely hear one another, but we had both known what was happening. The laser had been reflecting off of something. The light green cloud above us suddenly began to grow a dark red, at which point we rushed to get off the truck and take off. We were pushed down into the bed of the truck by the violent wind. On the floor of the bed, we both looked up to see the clouds split, revealing an incredible metal structure. It was smooth and dark, rounded on the bottom, and emitting a deep red light directly from what we thought was the center of this thing. The wind was at its strongest. We felt helpless and soon to be weightless. Before we could comprehend what was happening to us, we were lifted out of the truck bed, slowly moving towards the light. The wind had pushed us into two spinning tunnels of air apart from one another. I could see Craig screaming to me, but the droning had only gotten louder, and the wind tunnel hadn't helped my hearing either. I froze. All I could do was watch Craig do anything he could to get out. He took a knife from his pocket and opened it. I saw him look directly up and yell something before throwing it the best he could directly up along with his keys and wallet and whatever else he could find on him. It seemed to shake up the machine because the wind that had been lifting us shuddered a bit with each item that went up. It had soon stopped. At this point we were roughly 30 feet off the ground, frozen in the air. A thick cloud of vapor had released onto Craig, and his screaming had fallen silent. He was still moving and fighting, but whatever the substance was had begun to sedate him. In one last effort to fight back, he took a lighter from his pocket. I recognized it, a gift from his dad that Craig had always kept with him to remember him, and with whatever strength he had left, he flipped it open and scratched a puny spark from the lighter. Within seconds, the gas had lit into a bright yellow, orange crimson that lit up the night sky like nothing I had ever seen. The flame spiraled up the tunnel of wind, catching every trace of the gas and transforming it into a terrifying inferno. Through the blaze, I could just make out the silhouette of my best friend's skin dripping to the ground like a candle's wax. The flame eventually made its way to the machine to reveal the things, our captors, our abductors. They were not human. Too tall, too long, and just watching what was just seconds ago Craig. Like nothing had even happened. In so much shock, I had not realized the wind had picked back up, and I was on my way back up. They had released the same sour vapor into my tunnel, and all I could do was comply. There was nothing I could possibly do but accept that I had no more control. I felt so vulnerable, so helpless, so small. What happened next, I can only describe as dreamlike. Just parts of memories, but whenever I try to recount it to myself, it feels like I'm telling it wrong. I opened my blurry eyes to find myself in what looked like a hospital room. But I knew that it wasn't. Everything was off. 2 TVs in each corner, a door that looked like it belonged in a bedroom, and I had been covered in towels, not blankets. The one detail I know I can remember is moving the towels down to reveal a scar running vertically in the center of my body from my neck through my belly button. That's all I had cared to see or feel. The doorknob had begun shaking, so I flung myself back into the bed and shut my eyes, just barely peeking out. Enormous figures walked in. I assumed the same ones I saw watching Craig. There were a few of them, and one had noticed my eyes. It signaled to the others. They walked over slowly and just touched my eyelids. I couldn't get them back open. The next thing I can recall is waking again, but in another room, the same kind of setup as the last one. Random things that someone might recall being in an operating room. I woke to see more scars all over my body. My vision was still blurry, but I could feel them all over. As my vision cleared, I noticed one of the things in the corner of the room. I looked next to the bed to find a tray of scalpels that didn't look right. Like if you had told me to draw one, it might have looked like this. I grabbed it and tried to stand, tripping over myself. I knew I was being too loud. I knew that the thing had heard me, but I didn't care. I stumbled my way to the thing and threw myself onto it. In a blind rage, I uncontrollably hit the creature and used the tool I had picked up. In an instant, my vision had cleared. I looked around to see where I was. I turned my head to find Craig's mother's car in an empty parking garage, and underneath me, with 7 deep cuts in their back, was Craig's mother. I shot up and panicked. I couldn't comprehend anything at the speed in which it was happening. The pool of blood spread, and I could hear sirens in the distance. I instinctively got into her car and drove out of the garage as fast as I could. I cried and yelled for as long as I could remember. In my screaming fit, I had closed my eyes and laid my foot on the gas just to open them again and find myself back in my own truck. I drove the entire night until I physically couldn't anymore. I found another barren patch of land where I could sleep in my truck for the night. I write this now some months later as an apology. For Craig's mother. For my own parents, who I know are worried sick about where I've been. For Craig, my best friend. I could not even begin to explain how I feel. I have expressed all my guilt and sadness. I feel void of emotion. I felt this way for weeks. Until yesterday, when I felt the breeze. Smelled the sour wind. I know what I have to do. It's what Craig would have done for me. I am as prepared as I think I could be with a few knives, a firearm, a laser pointer, and a lighter. Craig's lighter that I just found in that dirt patch that we loved. That dirt patch I could never forget. That little dirt patch that we called No Man's Land. It had been the summer of that year, 6 full weeks to piss about and do absolutely nothing. So when a good friend of mine extended his usual invite to hang about at his house, how could I say no? His house was one of those old farmhouses, not quite decrepit but certainly not far off it. 16 acres of land sprawling across the British countryside that most notably led out into a wood. There had been all sorts of stories about it, or at least my friend told me so. Did I take him seriously? No, of course I didn't. Looking back on it, I don't even think he was taking himself seriously. It was all rubbish about ghosts and whatnot. Some poor woman had hung herself however long ago, and her wailing spirit had wandered betwixt the trees ever since. I don't really remember the details. It's been a while since this all happened. The dusk faded as the sun fell below the horizon. The plan had been simple. We would sneak out after his parents fell asleep and, kick about in the woods. We were never the smartest bunch, to be honest. It was the closest we could get to camping, and I guess that's all the incentive we needed. Darkness swallowed what had been left of the light, and we sat in the garden. There had been 3 of us that night. From memory, we told stories or something. Again, it's been a while. We saw the lights in the house dissipate, and we were left the dull crackle of the fire and the soft glow of its dying embers. With a somewhat startling clap of his hands, Richard jolted from his seat. Right then, my dear friends, let's get to work. His tone was clearly mocking. Josh hadn't been looking so hot all night, and whether that was from fear or his overconsumption of marshmallows, I couldn't tell, though the answer is pretty obvious looking back on it. The two of them had been my good friends for years. They'd been with me through everything you could think of, bullying, breakups, and broken bones included. I gave Josh a reassuring pat on the back, and the three of us started towards the woods. Silence permeated the expedition. I think we were all scared shitless, and just far too proud to admit it. I liked the woods. During the day, that is when the crunch of a leaf or the snap of a twig doesn't send you reeling in search of an imaginary murderous cannibal. We had been moving in silence for maybe 10 minutes, when Josh spoke up. "This is boring. Can we just go back?" And his voice was cut off abruptly by Richard, who, in a low whisper and through gritted teeth, said, "Hey, shut up. You think we're being quiet because we want to." He cocked his head, and I could see the panicked expression carved onto his face. He held a pale finger to his lips. "I don't want to get done in by the gamekeeper. These woods aren't all mine, and well, they say he's a bit crazy." The irony of his condemnation of speech was funny to me at the time. After all, we were shining flashlights through the trees like lunatics. Even now, I doubt being quiet would have kept us concealed. Over tree trunk and river, we crept, and I began to question Richard's decision to leave out the crazy gamekeeper, and why we'd really come out in the first place. Our flashlights illuminated the suffocating confines of the darkness. Like headlights, they searched over tree after tree after. Then there they were, 3 tallies carved like crooked fingers into the soft flesh of a single tree's trunk. I remember running my fingers through the grooves in the wood. They were rough and crude and seemingly pointless. We moved on soon after, the hysteria over the tally of doom fading back into the usual silence. Boredom had set in. Why exactly had Richard made us come out here, and why had we obliged? I had thought at the big age of 13 I was a grown-up, spared from fear. How wrong I'd been. The enforced silence made it worse. I had heard every creak in the trees, every muntjack's howl as it pierced the silence like a bullet, and every footstep upturning freshly fallen leaves. Step after step, my feet ached. I hadn't brought my walking shoes, and that had been my main concern at the time. By this point I had the rhythm of our steps down. Richard had heavier steps, whilst Josh had lighter ones, and well, I knew my own. That's why I found it so odd when a fourth set began crunching in the leaves somewhere behind us. The silence continued. I said nothing, as if ignoring it meant it wasn't happening. My flashlight groped the bark of the trees as I tried to block out the thought of the gamekeeper being behind me. But then there it was again, the trio of tallies. Richard looked up and let out a sigh and muttered a series of incessant swears. "God damn it!" His voice echoed of the trees and through the empty air. I opened my mouth to respond, but in his usual fashion, he silenced me with a wild gesture. "Look, I don't want to hear it. I know we've gone in circles and whatever. I just went the wrong way, that's all." A fruitless attempt to quiet the discontent arising in our party. It reassured me even less than it had him. I turned to Josh, and we exchanged some whispered banter at the expense of our not-so-gracious tour guide, who had already taken off into the dark, this time in the opposite direction. Together, we walked for maybe another 20 minutes. Time wasn't really a concept in that endless darkness. I was contented, I suppose. At the very least, our footsteps were once again very much alone. Soon, we swapped the scenery for a dewy field. We'd reached the forest's boundary. We all sighed in relief, far more startled than we were letting on, or at least I was. Richard pointed to the far side of the clearing, to a cluster of trees doing a poor job of concealing a lake hiding behind them, like a toddler playing hide and seek. This is what he had wanted to show us, and to his credit, it was beautiful. We started into the grass. It was taller than us, or at least it felt like it was. One foot after the other we snuck closer and closer to our journey's end. I couldn't see my companions. They, like me, were having just so much fun traversing the grasping confines of wet grass. Coughing and spluttering, I, like a cascade, crashed out from the field and right back into familiar surroundings. The woods. Thorns and nettles pricked at my backside as I pulled myself from their grip and to my feet. Soon after me came Josh in a similar fashion. I had helped him to his feet, expecting the third of our band to emerge, and yet, but he never did. My best friend, for years, through everything, and the last I would know of him was a scream. Like a miasma it hung in the air, almost tangible, and for what seemed like an eternity we stood there, frozen and unable to react. Josh's jaw was slack, and his words came out a barely perceivable cacophony of whimpers and cries. The gamekeeper? Is it him? You heard those footsteps before, right?" I said nothing and did nothing. Not a word in any language could have, or would have reassured either him or me. Our eyes locked for but a moment as another scream tore through the silence, followed by a great tumult from the woods in which we stood. Back into the grass we ran, tearing, ripping and weaving through the blades as they tried to constrict us and deliver us to the same fate as our friend. Into a clearing I collapsed. The bank of the lake stretched out in front of me. A journey's end. Silence was all that followed me. I turned and shone my flashlight like a lighthouse in a storm, and prayed it would lead Josh straight to me, but it never did. Alone with my thoughts, I slumped on that desolate bank, the water still and calm. I looked out into the dark. Despite the valiant efforts of my flashlight, it did not penetrate the void of the lake. I threw a pebble into the surface and wept. I wanted my mom. I wanted to go home. I remember thinking of all the possibilities, that my friends were dead, murdered by some crazy old bastard in the woods, and soon I would join them. I don't know how long I sat there, throwing pebbles into that mirror as it reflected my sorry state. I don't know how long I muttered that lament for my friends. Tears stung the corners of my eyes as they carved their way down my flushed cheeks. The ripples of the impacted water came back to me until I ran out of stones to throw. From that place I did not want to stir. I did not want to face what was in those woods. Whether it was the crazed gamekeeper or the ghosts, and in a selfish way I didn't care. I had wanted the mud of the bank to engulf me, or for me to wake up entirely. I quietly begged it had all just been nightmare. With my head in my hands I began to drift into sleep, my tears using my hands as a slide to fall and dilute into the mud. Once again, I fell into a rhythm, a twisted lullaby as I faded in and out of consciousness, the rustling of the leaves and the wind as it caressed the trees soothing me. Then came a soft rippling of the water. It had been at least 20 minutes since I cast my last stone. The intensity of the rippling increased, and I scrambled to my feet. Whatever had taken my friends was now here for me. Up the bank I fled, and yet I could not. It had been far easier to come down than it was to get back up. The mud turned to slop under my grasp, and I slipped and writhed as I desperately tried to clamber to my salvation. My fingers tugged on the blades of grass at the bank's pinnacle. They ripped and tore as I failed to pull myself up and over. Please, no, leave me alone. I began to plead with whatever was behind me. My voice was shrill, and now more than ever my tears stung. Silent went the world at my cries. The rippling altogether stopped, and I kept my face buried in the damp earth. Seconds, minutes, hours passed. I don't even know how long it was before I turned around, and I wish I never did. The water ran sanguine as a mass drifted onto the shore. Not long congealed blood clung to its face, glinting in response to my abandoned flashlight's beam. Out of their sockets its eyes bulged, pupils dilated into deep blackened moon-shaped pools. Twisted was its mouth, teeth missing whether from age or death I could not tell. It seemed to scream at me, and I screamed back. The police found me on the bank the next morning, and to be honest I don't remember what happened after or before they did. My friends, much like me, were soon found, and after the events of that night we kind of drifted in and out of friendship. A shame I suppose, but I guess it was for the best. It's been maybe 7 or 8 odd years now since that night, and I've never really moved on. The woods were fully searched, and of course the body that, found me on the bank was the gamekeeper. He'd been missing for a week. That fact had all but confirmed my worst fears. There had been someone or something in those woods with us that night. I went to therapy and to some support groups, and perhaps I would have forgotten about it entirely. After the first few years I did. Repressed in the deepest recesses of my brain, I kept it, until today. For the first time in my life, I no longer live with my parents. I found a farmhouse for rent out in the countryside close to my university. Eerily cheap, and now I suppose I know the reason. Today I stepped outside, and I don't know why. I was pulled. Like it was a pre-existing thought, if you get what I mean. My new abode leads out into the woods, and on the tree nearest my property were 2 tallies. The note is handwritten. I think it's my wife's. Maybe not. I'm not so sure at this point. I am an attentive man. I was born in a big household with 3 brothers. I was the only one among them who didn't get an education. My parents made sure of that. But I did not complain. Even though I had to work my way up, I was the one who got a prestigious career at a law firm. My brother, Gerald, contented himself with being a bookstore clerk, and my sister Sarah became a housewife. I am the one who rose above that. This is such an obvious fact. I can't fathom why anyone else would think so. When they ask me to stay at the office because we have a big case tomorrow, I pay my dues and stay until 10 to make sure everything's been reviewed properly. When my ailing father's not doing well, I'm the one who remembers to pay for his medicines. When my daughter, Claire, asks me for some money to play with her friends, I always have some change in hand. But if it is true, if I am so attentive, why does this note surprise me so? The ink looks fresh. In fact, I can tell you exactly from which pen this ink came from. It's my pen, the one I have right next to my laptop in the second floor study. It's the only one I never use, so it's the one with the most ink. The paper looks neat, so it's probably from one of the office sheets lying on that same study. But I still can't tell you if this is my wife's handwriting or a forgery, if this note is for real or not, nor what could have even led to this. I ponder this, sitting beside my car in the dead of night. It is 11 p.m. Another late night at work. The partners made me stay up late again, just so they could take credit, but it's okay. The house is dark, no sense of living light comes out from its tall windows. It's difficult for me to admit it, but I get a sense of dread whenever I enter the garage late at night. It feels as if the house's mouth is swallowing me whole, as if a shadow encroaches upon me. This is a weekly occurrence, but tonight is different. The darkness envelopes me, but the dread has given way to panic. A cold sensation trickles down my spine, and my bones resonate with a short, spastic quiver. Within the dark, a spark of thought emerges, but it is not a comforting thought. If I can't decide if this note is real, then there is the possibility that my wife is still alive, of course. Claire is off staying at her uncle's, so there's no risk of her being in danger. But what matters is, if my wife is all right, why is the house dark? Is she asleep? Who left the note, then? Is there someone inside the house right now? Rancid, palpitating panic possesses me, and my feet take a mind of their own. In a daze, I open the side door and enter our kitchen. Nothing seems amiss, but I don't really want to look. I leave the kitchen and bolt to the living room. Once again, I don't really want to look. My focus is on the stairs leading upwards to the second floor. Taking the steps, 2 at a time, I nearly trip on the way up. It's amazing how much our bodies abandon our minds at times like these. As I race for the study, it feels as if my thoughts have divorced themselves from a physical plane. I am my body, but my mind is also myself. The study doesn't seem ransacked nor invaded. Quickly, I turn on the desk light. I can't bear the dark, not anymore. Nothing seems amiss. Save, of course, for the pen, and the sheet of papers has been slightly moved. Someone did come in here and leave the note on the garage floor. Someone wanted me to find it, because they knew I'd only checked these 2 rooms today before going to bed. I remember the urban legend of the madman who licks a girl's toes when she goes to bed, and the brief flash of that type of imagery makes me sit down next to the desk. But there's another thought, worming and coiling itself around my brain. A madman wouldn't know so much about me, unless they had been stalking me for days, and I am not that interesting a person. No one is as attentive as me. No, the only person who would know is Lily, my wife. My dear, sweet, and possibly dead wife. My lip shakes, and a small moan comes out involuntarily out of my mouth. This can't be happening, not to me. Why would she do this? It can't be. I pull out my phone. I'm still in a daze, so my voice feels distant, like waves crashing against a faraway coast. Gerald, I need your help. My brother sounds as if I had just woken him up. He obviously gets the pleasure of being loved and going to sleep early. Gareth, it's past 11. What are you doing? Gerald, I think my wife just killed herself and I need your help. Fuck. Please, can you just shut up and come here? What? What happened? I don't know. Someone left a note in the garage, and I'm here in the study. Take your keys and come here right now. Gerald takes his sweet time. He doesn't leave near me, so maybe I should cut him some slack. But the time gives me ample opportunity to think. I don't move from the study chair, no. I don't dare. But boy, do I think. Lily. She is my whole life. I met her over 20 years ago. I wasn't the most attractive man, nor the one with the most money. I simply promised her one thing, that I was going to be the one who took care of things. As long as she stuck with me, she wouldn't want for anything, because I wasn't the type of person to give up. To my credit, I did keep that promise for a time. My breath fails me. I'm exhaling short gasps as I think of a long, decadent chain of failures. The time Lily had to drive alone to her mother's funeral because I chose work. She and Claire were inconsolable. That incorrigible weekend when she told me to pick up Claire from camp, but I got the dates wrong. I am an attentive man. How could I forget? The times I stayed up late at the office, but not because of work. I keep a separate cell phone to call Dana, but I'm not discreet. You tell yourself that keeping your phone in your nightstand is enough. That as long as you don't flaunt it in her face, Your exquisite and long chain of infidelities are somehow forgiven. But it is wrong, it seems. Now a death has occurred, and the dead are not silent. There is a long, vertical line of darkness in the far left corner of the room. A simple misplacement of the light, of course. The way my desk lamp is settled, this small patch of shadow is inevitable. But isn't it appropriate? A disgusting, long dark line that threatens to gorge itself on all that is around it. I hear rumblings coming from other rooms. The shadow grows. I don't know where my wife is. The shadow grows. Maybe, just maybe, her dead body is lying right next to me, her decaying face judging me without uttering a sound. The shadow grows. Of course I am not attentive. If I had been, I would have already known what ill had befallen my family before getting this note. Gerald finally arrives. Somehow, I am able to explain what is going on. I show him the note. He looks aghast. For a moment, I wonder what his own wife would think of me when she finds out. But why would she do this to you? He says. Perhaps, I respond, because she wants to punish me. She wants me to pay more attention. Gerald tries to hug me, but I back away. I don't even recognize his face at this point. I can't even recognize the room I am in right now. Come with me, he says. I'm sure she's fine, this isn't your fault. We'll look for her together. I know she isn't alive. We start out slowly. Gerald assures me he didn't see anything in the living room. I think it's too big of a house, and he might have missed her. He dismisses me, saying a body is too obvious to ignore. The way he says the word body makes me recoil. Is that what my wife is now? Just a body? Is it my fault? Leaving the study, we head for the game room. There's nothing there. Just a pool table, a TV, and a PlayStation. Of course she wouldn't be here. Still holding the note in my hand, something tells me to go to Claire's room. The door's open, but there's nobody there. But that's exactly what I'm afraid of. That there's nobody here but us. No robber, no big reveal. Gerald, I managed to say after a while, let's cut the crap. Let's check the master bedroom. That's where Lily and I sleep. If she isn't there, nor in the kitchen, it'll be all right. Everything's fine. I am not being punished for not being attentive enough. I get a second chance. Please, let there be a second chance. We enter the master bedroom. Our bed, in the center, arranged perfectly. There's no one else. Everything is in its right place. Just like I left it this morning. Except for one thing. The door to the bathroom is closed. Gerald, can you? Sure. No, maybe don't. Let's call the police. Gar, shut up. It's fine. There's no one here. Please. No, Gerald, stop. I can't look as he opens the door. My eyes go in every other possible direction. But in the 3 seconds Gerald takes to open the door, I start to see things. Things that I hadn't noticed before. I am an attentive man, after all. The floor is wet. Not too wet, but it is wet. The drawer to my nightstand is open. The second cell phone is gone. Oh my God! Gareth, don't look. Call the police. Gerald belts this out from the bathroom. I manage to see a pair of feet sticking out the frame of the bathroom's doorway. A pair of pale feet, and one of them has Lily's distinctive ankle mole. My stomach bile attempts to come out of my throat. Gerald was never the strongest one out of the two, but he manages to pull me away from the bedroom as I drench the floor in vomit. My sweet Lily. My eyes water, my mind races. There's nothing I can do to make this right. We stop moving until we reach the living room. Gerald attempts to say something. He mentions calling the authorities. He doesn't want me to move, but I'm simply pacing around until I'm resting against the kitchen table nearby. Gar, are you sure you knew what was going on with Lily? He asks. What the fuck kind of question is that? Gerald realizes his mistake. He pulls out his phone and leaves through the front door. He leaves it open just to make sure I'm not going to run up the stairs. Gerald, what did she look like? He doesn't answer. What did she look like? I yell. It's past midnight, but I don't care about the noise. Bad, she looked bad. She hit her head pretty bad against the floor. No, my Lily. Don't come up there, Gar. I don't want you to see her like that. She's all bloodied, naked, unrecognizable. Is that what you want me to say? Stay here while I call the cops. I turn away from him. I cry, but something sparks up inside my head. Another terrible thought. Why would she be naked? Why is the floor wet? Because she slipped. Why would she slip? The drawer. I start making connections. Lily takes a bath right before she goes to bed, always. Maybe. It can't be that. My wife killed herself because of me. This much is true. And if I have to overthink the details, maybe I should look closer at my actions, not hers. The cheating, the missed moments, the drained seconds I will never get back. Her face, her beautiful face, is something I will never get to see again. Unless I go up the stairs and bring a worthwhile finality to it all. If I have the courage to see the bloodied, bulbous facade that used to be Lily, splattered over the white ceramic. But just picturing it in my head is enough. Her eyes are wide open, not quite looking at me, just stuck in perpetual horror. A purple, amorphous mass covers her right cheek, born from the sudden impact. Hours from inattention have given way to the natural process of decomposition. Despite the gaping, wide expression her mouth has managed to convey, one can tell it's just the beginning of a much more dreadful transformation. One I cannot bear to look at. Looking at her face would be the end of me. But the thought begins again. Why is she in the bathroom? It doesn't matter, surely. But I try to focus on the process of analyzing the details again. Lily comes up to take a bath before bed. I remember how I usually like looking at her undress. She leaves the clothes underneath her pillow. She turns on the bathwater. Since she's careless, she usually lets it flow a bit while she undresses. What if she was doing this and Dana called? Dana left the office quite early. Maybe Dana called my cell phone, assuming I had brought it to the office with me. But I don't have it on me. I had left it in the drawer which is now empty. Oh no! Lily must have grabbed it and started looking at the messages, the pictures, the calls. And while she was looking, the water kept running. She slipped and hit her face. My wife is gone, and it's all my fault. I need to lie down. I need to run away from this. I begin to move. Gar, where are you going? Don't you go up. You need to stay here. I pay him no mind, heading for the garage door. I'm going to ride my car. I need you to stay here, Gar. Please, for the love of God. Just wait for the cops. You want me to call Claire for you? I'm in the garage already, looking for the car keys. What do you mean? What did you tell her before you left? What do you mean before I left? Claire isn't staying with me tonight. Of course she is. She told me she'd be staying with you tonight. Gerald, please, I don't have time for this right now. I say, almost crying at this point. Why can't he be a nurturing figure just this once? His voice comes in from the kitchen, very near me now. Gar, Claire stayed with me last week. I stay silent. He speaks again. Oh God, you forgot again, didn't you? I don't answer. Sweet Mother of God, I'm going to call her. I feel something slip out of my hand. It's the note. But I notice something new this time. There's something else written on the backside. It simply reads, "It's all your fault," in a very delicate handwriting. A familiar one, but it isn't Lily's, of course. She couldn't have written a note if she slipped in the bathroom. Then, a familiar ringtone erupts in the dead of night. The garage turns the sound into a cacophonic storm that assaults my ears. I recognize that tune, but it doesn't belong to me. I don't have to ask myself to whom it belongs to in order to know the answer. A flash of light, too small to notice during the day, but blindingly incandescent in the middle of the night. It's coming from the same phone emitting the ringtone. Gerald's calling Claire, and the tone is coming from this room, from the garage. My eyes follow the source. The light, it plays with the dark. There's another line of deep dark shadow that stretches itself out from a faraway corner. I can see an open toolbox, with a bloody screwdriver lying on the ground. My eyes follow upwards, to the tumultuous darkness. I stare at the darkness, and my daughter's dead eyes stare back at me. For those of you who don't know, I've been living on my grandfather's farm after he had a stroke. If you haven't already read my first post, you can find it here. Sorry for taking so long to post an update, but running a farm is hard work. I've finally been able to head back in town, where I can connect to the internet. I appreciate the advice I got in the comments for my last post as well. Some suggested just informing the neighbors of the situation and leaving. I actually considered it, but recently found out I can't. One of you suggested taking advantage of the well to profit it from it, but my grandfather already has optimized the farm for profit. This is with the exception of one person's suggestion to plant poppies on the farm. I don't think I want the DEA to raid my grandfather's farm, so I'm probably not going to grow illicit drugs. Anyways, it's been a rough couple days. I don't know entirely where to start, so I'll just jump into it. I drove home from town after my last update. I spent as long as I could enjoying the small piece of civilization I still get to experience on occasion, and ended up driving home at night. Nighttime in the country is a different kind of dark compared to the cities. The only thing in the world is the little patch of reality carved out by your headlights and the sea of stars crowding the sky above. I had planned to get home, call Pearson the coroner, and leave him a voicemail at his office explaining that I was leaving and someone else would have to feed the well. I would gather all my things, pack up my car and drive back to the city I called home in the morning. I would leave the ravenous hole in the ground for some other poor soul to enslave and escape back to a real life to live. I could probably get my job back at the warehouse pretty quickly, and my mother had been kind enough to cover the rent on my one-bedroom apartment, so I knew there was a life to go back to. It may have been mediocre and even a little depressing at times, but it was nothing compared to being stranded on this island in a sea of corn. I felt like a shipwrecked sailor, looking out at the golden waves around me and wishing for a rescue that wouldn't come. I pulled into the driveway after midnight, watching as the farmhouse materialized from the darkness. I couldn't see it in the night, but I knew the well was lying a short distance away down the path next to the house. I could feel its presence even if I couldn't see it. I could feel its indifference to the horror it had inflicted on 3 generations of my family now. I could feel it waiting for its next meal, patient and foreboding. Mostly, I could feel its hunger. I did my best to not look in its direction as I climbed the wooded steps of the porch to go inside. I walked in and was met with a wave of exhaustion. There are no days off on a farm and work starts early, so my nighttime foray into town had sapped every bit of the energy I had left. I went upstairs and didn't even bother changing before falling into bed. Sleep didn't take long to overtake me, but it was far from restful. There's a question that has been eating at me since I first learned of my grandfather's secret in the well. He said that his father had negotiated with the thing and made a deal. I have yelled into that well quite a few times, but it had never spoken a word. I was left with the distinct impression that it couldn't form human words, so I wondered how my great-grandfather had communicated with it. That night, I got my answer. I had the most horrifying dream I have ever had in my entire life. It started with me looking up from a hole in the ground. I remember feeling so hungry that it hurt. I could hear movement around the top of the hole accompanied by human voices. I know now that I was hearing people, but in the dream, I didn't think of them as people. In my dream, my mind told me that it was food above me, not people. I could feel the need to fill my stomach gnawing in my guts, salivating as the food crept closer. I saw a figure in the sunlight shining above me, and suddenly, I was bursting through the surrounding ground, my oversized mouth closing around the man above me. I noticed in the split second before I snatched him up that he was a Native American, then heard him screaming as my teeth ground wriggling flesh and snapped bones. I could feel the warm blood bursting from the body as the screaming stopped, could feel it mixing with the chewed flesh as I greedily swallowed. Then I was back in the hole looking up. This time it was different. An old man came and stood over the lip of the hole, chanting with outstretched arms in a perfect tableau of worship. While the words should have been foreign to my ears, in the dream, I understood them in an instinctual way. There was one word that stood out though. I learned the thing's name. Adicia, we ask you to accept this offering in return for your blessing. We are your humble servants, and you, our magnanimous master. We feed you, Adicia, and in return you feed us. With that, the old man withdrew from the edge, stepping backwards. A young woman came forward, calmly standing above me. She held her arms outstretched as the old man had, then let herself fall forward. Again came the sensation of flesh and bone being broken as wet crunching filled my ears, echoing all around me in the confines of my subterranean dwelling. Over it, I could hear the old man speaking again. Praise Adicia. He is the well of life. We feed the well, and the well feeds us. The next scene to come to me was the most surreal of all. I saw a young man in a field who looked eerily similar to me. He was digging, alternating between a shovel and pickaxe. He kept looking over his shoulder in my direction as he worked, a worried expression on his familiar face. I looked over to the farmhouse nearby, its fresh-cut wooden planks instantly recognizable to me. It was the farm I currently inhabited. There, on the porch, was a young woman holding an infant child in her arms. I realized I was looking at my great-grandmother, my grandfather sleeping in her arms. When I looked back at the young man, he was stacking stones in a ring around the boundary of the hole he had dug. As he placed the last one, he looked at me. So that's it then. You stay there and restrict yourself to human meat once a year, and I'll see to it that you never go hungry. My descendants will keep this covenant as well. My child and my child's child, and so on shall uphold it until the end of time. In return, you bless our crops and cease hunting us. That's the deal. We feed the well, and the well feeds us. Then, I was looking up from the well, an abnormally large moon shining down the ring of stones above. A bright moon. A harvest moon. I saw the young face of my grandfather look down it, a grim expression fixed on his features. That's when I heard the screams. A man in chains was led to the edge, 3 men forcing him over the stone barrier as he cried out, "No! Please! I don't want to die. This is inhuman." In response, one of the young men wrestling with him punched him in the back of the head hard enough to cause the man to start bleeding, scarlet rivulets dripping down his neck. The man who had hit him was dressed as a police officer. He held the man by the collar of his shirt and pushed him until he was staring me in the eyes. "Please, please don't do this," the man continued to beg. A short second later, he was tumbling towards me, eyes widened with fear as he screamed. When I awoke, I could still taste the man's flesh in my mouth, could still feel his blood gushing from his body with every crushing bite. My ears could still hear the wet crunch as well, but beneath it, a voice that sounded like a cross between the crackling of a fire and stone grinding on stone spoke very low. "Uphold the covenant." The first thing I did was jump out of bed and run to the bathroom to vomit. The flavor of human flesh was still fresh in my mouth, a foul taste of copper and raw meat. I heaved over the toilet for 20 minutes, my stomach aching as it emptied its contents. I half expected to see bits of flesh with bones jutting up through them when I looked in the toilet to flush, but thankfully, it was just the half-digested remains of last night's dinner. I rinsed my mouth out, then stared in the mirror. The man looking back had dark rings under his eyes and a tired expression. It was still my face, but I could see the pain and horror of my experience etched into every line of it. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying not to remember the voice I had heard as I had awoke and failing. The voice of Adicia, the voice of the well. I tried not to think about it as I began the daily chores of running a farm. I spread fertilizer over fields, fed cattle, sprayed insecticide. The whole time, a deep feeling of dread spread through me. I knew it was down there, lying in wait beneath my feet, its hunger growing. I tried avoiding the well all day, taking care to walk widely around it as I passed. I couldn't help but envision an enormous arm reaching out from it and grabbing me as I screamed, pulling me into its unfathomable depths to become nothing more than another meal. The covenant my great-grandfather had made with the thing seemed a flimsy protection from such a creature. Inevitably, the time came for me to feed it. As I tossed the hunk of beef into the pit, I quickly plugged my ears with my fingers to avoid hearing the sound of meat and bone being snapped and chewed. Regardless, the sound still reached me and made me feel nauseous. I turned towards the house, walking away from the well as quickly as possible and trying not to get sick again. This time, I succeeded, but immediately felt ill in a completely different way when I got to the end of the path leading from the well. A car was parked alongside my own, and my brother, Daniel, was standing beside it. It's not that I didn't love Daniel. After all, he was my brother. We had grown up together, shared a childhood together. It's just that as his life went one way, mine went another. He was successful, which I hated to say, made me more than a little envious. At my age, I didn't have a girlfriend, much less a wife. I didn't have a job with great prospects, just my little forklift gig, which I was now fired from. While he had a wife, a great job and money, all I had was this farm that I desperately wanted to leave. While he had a life, I had the well. "Hey Chester," he said to me when I approached. "I'm sorry I took so long to get here. What are you doing here?" I asked him, a little more harshly than I intended to. "Well, I came to check on you," he responded unconvincingly. "I'm fine. Thanks for coming." "Chester, there's no need to be hostile. I just wanted to pay my respects to Grandpa Silas. More like pick over the farm for anything of value before attempting to sell it, I thought. His funeral isn't for a few more days," I said coldly. "There's a hotel in town you can stay in." "Why wouldn't I stay here?" he shot back with some indignation in his voice. "There's no Wi-Fi or cell service out here. If you really want to sleep here, you can, but it's pretty boring." "That's fine. I'll take the guest bedroom. After all, I want to be present when we start trying to sell the place." "We're not selling the farm," I replied. "This place is half mine, Cheese. I know you can't buy me out, so I'm selling it. We can split the money after." I took a deep breath. After all, this was my brother. Maybe I could trust him. "You don't understand. There's something going on here. We can't just sell this place." "Yeah, what's going on?" he asked harshly. "There's something in the well." "What? Have you lost your mind?" he responded with a look of derision. "I know it sounds crazy," I explained, "but there's something down there. Something evil. Grandpa Silas told me to feed it." I spent the next hour sitting at the kitchen table with him, explaining everything that had happened. I even showed him our great-grandfather's journal, hoping he'd understand the grave situation we were in. But instead, he responded with incredulity. "Chester, you've either lost your mind, or this is some stupid hoax to cheat me out of my half of the farm." "Damn it, Danny, how do you explain the journal?" His face changed into one of genuine concern. "You clearly wrote it. I'm worried about you, Chester. If you really believe this, you need help. Let's just go see Mom." "You don't believe me? Fine, come with me." I led him from the house, stopping in the cellar to grab a hunk of meat, and headed for the well. Once we stood before it, I tossed it in and waited for the crunch of Adicea feeding to ring out from it, but it never came. "I'm calling someone, Chester. You need help. I'm telling you it's down there. If you get me committed, it'll get loose and kill everyone around here." Danny pulled out his phone, which I slapped out of his hand. He responded by giving me a hard shove. "Knock it off, Chester. I don't know if you're just crazy or trying to fool me, but we're selling the place and splitting the money. It's time to accept it. You're going to get people killed, Danny. I'm not going to sell it." I screamed. "Fine, you've given me enough here to have you committed anyways. Once I sell it, I'll send you your half of the money. It's time to stop playing farmer and go home, cheese." He bent down to pick up the phone that had dropped to the ground, so I shoved him away from it. He managed to keep his feet and responded by punching me in the face. "Stop it, Danny. You don't understand what's down there." Daniel hit me again, so I kicked him in the leg. After that, we were on one another, punching and hitting each other repeatedly. This culminated in Daniel catching my chin with a strong swing that left me sprawling on the ground, the world dimming and swirling as I tried to regain my senses. Through my blurred vision, I watched him pick up his cell phone and turn back towards me. "You're scaring me, Chester. I'm calling the police. Maybe jail will be better than an asylum anyways." I could taste blood in my mouth, reminding me of the dream I had last night. I spat the blood onto the dirt and rolled to my side. Danny was unlocking his phone and dialing what I knew was 911. With a gasp of effort, I pushed myself into a sitting position. If Danny made that call, I'd go to jail, and the thing in the well would be free to renew its hunting. People would die. I forced myself onto my feet and charged at Danny, tackling him hard enough to take us both off our feet. We both landed hard on the ground, but I was dazed and Danny wasn't. He hammered me with blows, managing to roll us over and get on top of me. He struck down hard enough for me to feel my cheeks split and begin bleeding. "Fuck you, Chester. I ought to throw you down that damn well for this shit." He stood up, yanking me to my feet and dragging me to the edge of the well. "I don't see anything down there, do you?" he cried out, forcing me to bend over the stone barrier and peer into the inky depths below. "Danny, stop," I managed to choke out. "In a few minutes, I'll get the cops here and you're going to jail. Then, I'm going to sell this damn place and go home. I don't know what kind of help you need, but you better pull it the hell together." He pushed me a little lower, my feet leaving the ground as I gripped the stones I was now balanced on. "Do you see anything down there yet? Are you ready to get a grip yet?" I felt a surge of anger and frustration shoot through me as I spun around and punched Danny in the face as hard as I could. As he stumbled back, my feet found the ground again. I grabbed him by the shoulders and spun him around, shoving him into the stone wall of the well as hard as I could. I hadn't really thought about it, just knowing there was an object there that I could drive him into to stun him. However, as he made contact with the well, I watched in horror as he tumbled over the side. I ran forward, intending to help him, but already knowing it was too late. As I reached the edge and peered down the hole, I was just in time to hear it. A loud, wet crunch. Then another. I stumbled back and fell to the ground, tears streaming down my face as another rang out. "No," I said in disbelief. I sat there for a long time as the chewing subsided, and the air was filled with the sound of wind whispering over crops and insects buzzing lazily. I buried my bruised face in my hands and sobbed, overcome with guilt. I didn't care that Danny had attacked me, he was my brother. He had every reason to think I had lost my mind. Hell, I had wondered the same thing hundreds of times since coming here. Why couldn't you just listen to me? I screamed, though the person it was intended for was now incapable of hearing me. I finally stood up, walking over to where he had dropped the phone on the ground, and picked it up. I could see that it was attempting to dial out to emergency services, the number on the screen showing 911. I put it to my ear, hearing the busy signal, and remembered there was no cell service in this area. I pocketed the phone as I was overcome with a fresh wave of grief and realized my brother had died for nothing. I walked back to the house, noting Danny's car still parked next to mine. I felt cold and numb at this point, not fully accepting what I had done. I sat down on the porch and stared at the sun as it began to set and paint the world in its gold and rose hues. Finally, I made the decision I hadn't even realized I was considering. I knew the well had to be fed, but I was done. In that moment, I had finally reached what was my breaking point and decided someone besides me would have to figure out what to do. The whole town could get swallowed up for all I cared. I couldn't keep living with the fact that I had killed my one and only brother. I walked inside the house and picked up the old, corded phone fixed to the wall in the kitchen and dialed out to 911. I asked to speak to the police and after a short pause was connected to a gruff male voice. "You said you have a crime to report?" "Yes. I would like to report a murder." There was a pause and a sharp intake of breath. I swallowed hard, the fear and finality of what I was about to do hitting home. I almost hung up the phone, but thought of my brother going over the side of the well. I realized that thought would repeat in my mind until the day I died. I pushed on. "Hello, are you still there?" I asked. Yeah. Okay, can I have your address?" I gave him the exact address, and when I was done, I added, "I killed my brother." "Please remain where you are," the voice responded in a terse tone. I didn't have to wait long. In less than 15 minutes, I could hear cars pulling up outside the house, so I went outside to meet them. I exited with my hands above my head, expecting drawn guns and loud commands, but none of that came. Instead, they were just getting out of their vehicles. I decided to say something to get their attention. "Don't worry," I called out to the 4 police officers, who just calmly meandered from their cars at a slow pace to stand in front of the farmhouse. I planned to come quietly. 2 of the police stared at me from a distance, while the other 2 leaned close to one another and held some whispered conversation. Then, they parted and one of them walked to me. "Okay, Chester, let's go inside for a little talk." I didn't know how these things normally go, but the last thing I had expected was for a conversation at the kitchen table. I took a seat as the officer sat down across from me, where my brother had been sitting a few hours earlier when he was alive. The police officer had short, black hair and piercing eyes. He was maybe in his mid-30s or late 20s. He stared at me for a few seconds before speaking. "So, you're saying you killed your brother?" "Yes, sir. It was an accident. I shoved him near the well out back, and he fell over the side." "I see. I would like to turn myself in," I added. "Listen, Chester, I understand that you're worried about your brother, but going to jail won't bring him back," the officer said sympathetically. "What do you mean?" "I killed a man. I killed my brother. I have to face justice. Just be sure to feed the well while I'm locked up." "I know that sounds weird, but Dash." The officer cut me off. "Chester, your brother went missing. His wife will be getting a note tomorrow stating that he has decided to leave the country. I know you miss him, but doing this won't bring him back." I suddenly felt all the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about?" "I killed him. Take me to jail." "Don't worry, Chester. We'll try to find him, but with these things, who knows?" The officer stood up, just as I heard wheels on the gravel road outside. I followed the officer to the door, berating him the whole way. "This is insane. I killed him. I killed him." "Chester, if you did that, there'd be a body," he responded in an even voice as he opened up the front door and went outside. I followed him out the door, ready to continue protesting, but fell silent when I walked onto the porch. I could see a tow truck just starting to turn the corner of the road in the distance, my brother's car being pulled behind it. "We'll keep looking, Chester," the officer said, walking back down the porch steps towards his car. "In the meantime, get some rest and try not to worry. Oh, and don't forget!" He turned around and looked me in the eyes, one hand on the door of his car. He had an angry look on his face, full of threats unsaid. He didn't need to say them. The way he gripped the gun strapped to his side with his other hand said everything he needed to convey. "Feed the well, and the well feeds us." The message was clear. They knew about Danny's wife. They likely knew about my mother. I wouldn't be the one suffering if I didn't do what was expected from me. After that, the 2 squad cars began to drive away. I sat down on the steps of the porch as the sun completely vanished behind the horizon and the deep night of the rural countryside fell over the land. I didn't even know how to fathom what had just happened. I understood it in an analytical sense, but I just couldn't comprehend that it had really happened. Danny was gone, and I couldn't even be punished for it. If I had felt trapped before, it was nothing compared to the sensation that now overwhelmed me. I wondered if the rest of my life would be spent here on this farm, yearning for the city lights of my old life, yearning to face justice for killing my own brother, a slave to Adesea, a servant of the well. In some ways, maybe that's what I deserved. Killing my brother was an accident, but I felt a need to be punished for it. I had originally intended to spend the rest of my life inside a prison cell to atone for it, but I suppose this farm isn't entirely dissimilar. I reached in my pocket, pulling out Danny's phone, and hit the button on the side of the device. The phone lit up, and I could see his lock screen. It was a picture of the both of us as kids, here on the farm. I remembered that picture. My mom had taken it while Danny and I were running around and playing in front of the cornfield. We were both smiling with an arm around each other. We couldn't have been older than 8 and 9. I buried my head in my arms and sobbed. I decided I'd keep his phone, making a point to look at the picture on it every day, never letting myself forget what I had done. To rub salt in this wound, I could see that his wife had texted him just a little while earlier. "Miss you, honey." I knew she'd never receive a response. She'd get a note tomorrow. Maybe she would hold out hope for a little while, but one day, she'd accept that he was never coming home. At least she'd persist with the lie that he was still alive somewhere. The same goes for my mother. Only I would know the truth, a truth I would have to carry alone. I looked at the picture on his phone again, realizing that Daniel had loved me and cared about me, even if he had been unable to express it. That picture was all the proof I needed to see. Looking at it now, I can feel my chest growing heavy with anguish and my eyes stinging with the force of holding back tears. I miss my little brother,